What if I told you that while Europeans were still guessing seasons by watching birds migrate, ancient Africans had already calculated the exact length of a year down to 6 hours, and that a 20,000-year-old bone found in the Congo contains mathematical knowledge that would appear in Europe for another 15,000 years? Clusterstory. This is Clusterstory, where we take a deep dive into history to get a great understanding of how we got here. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell, like and share this video. Now, let us journey back through the corridors of time itself. The Ishango Bone, humanity's first calculator dip in the mountains of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Near the shores of Lake Edward, archaeologists discovered something that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about ancient intelligence. The Ishango Bone. Carved over 20,000 years ago, this small baboon fibula contains a series of notches that scientists initially dismissed as simple tally marks. But upon closer examination, something extraordinary emerged. These weren't random scratches, they were precise mathematical sequences. The markings on this bone demonstrate an understanding of prime numbers, multiplication by doubling, and most importantly, a lunar calendar system tracking the phases of the moon over a 6-month period. 20,000 years ago. To put this into perspective, the famous Stonehenge in Britain wouldn't be built for another 15,000 years. The ancient Greeks, whom Europeans credit with the birth of mathematics, wouldn't exist for another 17,000 years. Yet here, in the heart of Africa, our ancestors were already mapping the heavens. The Egyptian calendar, precision that defied the ancient world. When we speak of ancient African timekeeping, we cannot ignore the civilization that built monuments to time itself. Ancient Egypt. Around 3000 BC, Egyptian astronomers achieved something that would take Europe nearly 4,000 years to replicate. They developed a 365-day calendar. But how did they accomplish this feat? The answer lies in their obsessive observation of a single star, Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Egyptian priests noticed that every year, Sirius would disappear below the horizon for 70 days. Then, just before dawn, it would reappear in a phenomenon called the heliacal rising. And each time this happened, the Nile would flood shortly after. This wasn't coincidence to them. This was divine clockwork. They tracked this pattern for centuries, eventually calculating that exactly 365 days passed between each heliacal rising. They divided this into 12 months of 30 days each, with 5 additional days at the end they called their epagomenal days, birthdays of their gods. Meanwhile, in Europe, Celtic tribes were still relying on oral traditions passed down through druids, often losing years to miscalculations and tribal disputes. The Nilometer, engineering time and Survey Valbart calculating the calendar, was just the beginning. Ancient Egyptians needed to predict not just when the Nile would flood, but how much it would rise. Their entire civilization depended on it. Enter the Nilometer. These ingenious structures were built along the Nile River at strategic points. Some were simple pillars marked with measurements. Others were elaborate staircases descending into the water. The most sophisticated featured underground chambers connected to the river by tunnels. Priests would measure the water levels daily, comparing them to records spanning hundreds of years. They could predict agricultural yields months in advance. They knew exactly when to plant, when to harvest, and when to store. This wasn't just timekeeping. This was time mastery. The data collected from Nilometers was so valuable that it was considered state property. Revealing flood predictions to foreign powers was punishable by death. Egypt understood something fundamental. Whoever controls the understanding of time controls the future. The Dogon people, astronomers of the impossible. Now we travel west, to the sandstone cliffs of Mali, where the Dogon people have lived for over 1,000 years. What they knew about the cosmos has baffled scientists since the 1930s. The Dogon possessed detailed knowledge of Sirius B, a white dwarf star completely invisible to the naked eye. It wasn't discovered by Western astronomers until 1862, and not photographed until 1970. Yet Dogon oral traditions, passed down for generations, accurately described Sirius B's orbital period of 50 years. They knew it was incredibly dense. They knew it was small. They even knew there was a third star in the system, Sirius C, which Western science only confirmed tentatively in the 1990s. How did they know this? Dogon elders maintained calendars based on the movement of these invisible stars. Their time cycles included a 60-year period based on the orbits of Jupiter and Saturn, and a 50-year cycle based on Sirius BN. These weren't primitive people making lucky guesses. These were astronomers with knowledge that shouldn't have been possible. The Ethiopian calendar, a system that still defies the West. Ethiopia operates on a calendar that is 7 to 8 years behind the Gregorian calendar. But calling it behind reveals our own bias. The Ethiopian calendar is one of the oldest in continuous use. It contains 12 months of 30 days each, plus a 13th month of 5 or 6 days. While Europe adopted the Gregorian calendar in 1582 to fix the errors of the Julian calendar, Ethiopia saw no need to change. Why would they? Their system was already working perfectly. Ethiopian astronomers developed a complex calculation called the Bari Hasab, or Sea of Calculations. This mathematical system accurately predicted Easter, new moons, and seasonal changes for centuries before European scholars developed similar techniques. Even today, when you land in Addis Ababa, you're greeted by a sign that might say the year is 2016, while the rest of the world reads 2024. This isn't backwardness. This is a civilization that refused to abandon a system that served them well. Namaratanga, Africa's Stonehenge in the barren landscape of northwestern Kenya, stands a circle of stone pillars that archaeologists have dated to 300 BC. Namaratanga, which means stone people in the Turkana language. For years, researchers assumed these were simple grave markers, but in 1978, astronomer BMM Lynch made a startling discovery. The 19 basalt pillars were precisely aligned with 7 star systems, not just any stars, but the same stars used by modern Cushitic people to construct a 12-month calendar. Each stone pointed to where specific stars would rise at specific times of year. This was an astronomical observatory, a calendar written in stone. The sophistication of Namaratanga suggests it wasn't a sudden invention. It represented centuries, possibly millennia, of accumulated astronomical knowledge. Generations of Africans watching, recording, and understanding the patterns of the universe. The Great Zimbabwe Time Towers in southern Africa. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe contain towers and walls that archaeologists have only recently understood. The conical tower at Great Zimbabwe, standing 11 meters tall, was long thought to be purely decorative or symbolic, but recent analysis suggests it may have functioned as a solar observatory. The shadows cast by the tower at specific times of year aligned with other structures in ways that allowed inhabitants to track solstices and equinoxes with remarkable precision. Similar precision has been found in the layout of buildings throughout the complex. Windows and doorways frame specific stars at specific times. Passageways narrow and widen in ways that suggest light was being used as a measuring tool. Great Zimbabwe wasn't just a city. It was a machine for understanding time. Why history forgot, so why don't we learn about these achievements in school? The colonial era deliberately erased African scientific contributions. European explorers who encountered advanced African civilizations couldn't reconcile what they saw with their racist ideologies, so they invented alternative explanations. The pyramids must have been built by lost civilizations. Great Zimbabwe must have been constructed by Phoenicians. African astronomical knowledge must have been taught by ancient aliens. Anything to avoid admitting the truth. African peoples across thousands of years and thousands of miles developed sophisticated systems for understanding time. They tracked stars invisible to European telescopes. They calculated calendar years that took Europe millennia to match. They built observatories that still align with the heavens today. Conclusion: reclaiming the legacy. The next time someone speaks of the Dark Continent, remember the Ishango Bone. Remember the Nilometers. Remember the Dogon astronomers gazing at stars they shouldn't have been able to see. African timekeeping wasn't primitive. It was pioneering. And perhaps the greatest proof lies in this simple fact. The 365-day calendar we use today, the one governing your appointments, your deadlines, your very understanding of the year, it began in Africa. If this video opened your eyes to history you never knew existed, subscribe to Clusterstory. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the real stories that shaped our world. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Because the past is never dead. It's not even past. Until next time, keep questioning everything.